Hello, everybody, and welcome to Boston Balling. I'm your host, Gabby Hurlbut. Happy Tuesday. Hope you all are having a great start to the week. NBA and NHL playoffs are here. The Bruins and Celtics both won their first game of their playoff series, which is super exciting. So the countdown has now begun to the possible two parades that Boston might be seeing. And I am not one to jinx, so I'm just going to leave it at that. But definitely excited to see how those teams progress. And we also have Red Sox baseball. So definitely a fun time for sports. This is a really, really great time of year. So much going on, so much to talk about. I'm really looking forward to bringing you all another episode of the show. Obviously, the Red Sox, it's been a couple weeks of the season so far, so definitely excited to kind of break down a little bit of what we've seen. And I'm excited to introduce to you all a special guest that I have with me on this episode. He is the founder of Beyond the Monster, primarily known for their Red Sox content. He has a couple Red Sox podcasts, a Bruins podcast, so he really does it all. Super knowledgeable about Boston sports, and I really enjoy following his baseball content in particular. Chris Henrique, how are you doing this afternoon?
I am good. I am good. Happy to just be able to relax. Been on the go for the last I don't know, a couple of weeks, but between either watching the Sox or being out in Worcester covering the Woo Sox, so it's nice to have a little bit of free time this week.
Yeah, I'm sure that can get really busy, especially, when the season starts and it's so much going on. I'm sure it's probably a lot of going back and forth, I can imagine.
Yeah, but I mean, it's fun though. It's I wouldn't trade it.
Yeah, honestly, it really does sound cliche when people say when you love what you do, you really don't have to work a day in your life. But I feel like that's so true because if you're really passionate about something and it's something that you find fun anyway, finding a way to work in something like that is just so rewarding.
Yeah, no, I agree. I tell people all the time, if you would have said like 4 years ago that I'd be blogging, podcasting, kind of like a stone's throw away from, you know, players that we see on the major league roster, things like that, I would have called you crazy. So it's like I said, I wouldn't trade it, and still there's still more to come. So we still got more to do.
For sure. Yeah, that's definitely super exciting. And obviously, you do a lot. You have a lot going on with your baseball coverage. So I definitely want to hear a little bit about kind of how you got started, your background, how really Beyond the Monster came to be and kind of how you ended up where you are now.
Yeah, so back in 2020, right when the pandemic started and sports started to shut down, we needed ways to figure out what we were going to write about. So I was with a different website at the time, and I figured, well, if we're not going to be able to watch sports live, might as well start talking about throwbacks. So Beyond the Monster started as really just throwback baseball stories, specifically Red Sox. I wanted to really kind of highlight that if like the Green Monster could ever tell stories, what would the Green Monster be able to tell you? And there's so many things that that has happened at Fenway Park, let alone whether it's the big games we've gotten to see there, or even just like individual outings. So it started with that, and from there, I think it was August of 2021, we kind of broke away from that website, and Beyond the Monster had like 120 some odd followers on Twitter, and now is I think we have 19 or 20 different ways in which you can consume our content, whether it's from Twitter to Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, etc. We actually just added Red Sox Digest recently and rebranded some stuff, and we're going to be getting a little bit deeper into Instagram. The website coming pretty soon as well, because Substack is great, but we really want to jump into the website as well. So that's how it started. It just started out as an article series, and I've been really thankful too, because along the way I've met some really good people, and those people have helped make what Beyond the Monster is. You know what I mean? So I put a lot of time into it, but I have a lot of really good people around me. And I mean, without them, I don't think we'd be where we're at the moment.
Yeah, it's super cool to probably watch how it's progressed since it started to now and really how it's evolved and the following that it's gained in that time because I feel like when you do something like that and you start something from scratch, you're really unsure, what it's going to turn into and if people are going to pay attention to it. Because I know for me, I can relate to that too from when I started my podcast. And I was like, nobody's going to listen to this. Like, who
Mhm.
wants to listen to me talk about sports? I'm not that special or anything. But just to see the following that it's developed in that time has really surprised me too. So I feel like it's super cool to look back on something that you started and kind of see just how it's developed and grown in that time.
Yeah, it's been really one really cool thing is just the networking, you know what I mean, with people. And um, I took Chris Catillo's workshop, both his level 1 and level 2 for sports writing workshop. And, you know, being able to, he like had me, I think it was maybe about 4 weeks ago as a guest speaker, and he's had like, Carabas and Rosenthal and, the who's who of, when it comes to sports media on there. So I felt like, one, super honored, but being able to kind of like tell the story of kind of where we started to where, I'm at right now. It was fun because, again, like you were just saying, why would people want to listen to what you're saying or read what you're writing? But I think it's just a matter of, you just got to stay consistent. You just got to keep pushing. There's times where you want to be like, oh, why am I doing this? But then there's other times where it is super rewarding. When you get, a player you didn't think that would want to chat with you on a podcast, or you get a random scoop that you never thought in a million years you'd ever go and break, that Matt Barnes would be designated for assignment by the Red Sox. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of really, really rewarding pieces that you can pull out of being a content creator. It's really just, you have to stick with it. You have to, a lot of trial and error, and just not be afraid to fail. But on the flip side, just be really, really humble and open-minded to a lot of things. And I feel like that's something that I've been able to do. And again, like, we're not done yet. There's a lot more that we want to accomplish. There's a lot that we're talking about, that we're trying to do behind the scenes. Sports betting is like the next thing I think we're going to be jumping into, but we're not quite ready for that just yet. And once I think we have a website, we're going to be able to add even more, writers, and what we're looking for is going to change, you know what I mean? And how we're going to be adding talent to our team and stuff like that. So we're definitely trending in a really, really awesome direction. And, I don't, who knows where it can turn into. So.
Yeah, that's the exciting thing too, is thinking about the future and not really knowing where it's going to go, but seeing that potential for the future is definitely just cool to think about as well.
Yeah. So we're really, really excited. So, and it's awesome because we have a really passionate fan base about all of the teams in this area.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a little daunting at times, but if we didn't have that too, I don't know how, like, other websites and other creators, really stay engaged. You see some other teams that just, they're not, it's not good product. Whereas, here there's always something to talk about, which is definitely, we're thankful for that.
Yeah, I mean, Boston fans are definitely really intense and we love our teams. But like you said, there's a lot to love right now because there's usually always, a team in the postseason or just exciting teams to talk about. Whereas if you look at fans from, other cities, sometimes I can't even imagine being like a Detroit sports fan or
Yeah.
like a Cleveland even is a good example too. Just like looking at fan bases who just don't really see a lot of winning. And it's, I feel blessed to be part of this fan base, really.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, if you are creating Cleveland stuff, they do have a really good AAA team that I just saw last week completely demolish the Red Sox, 5 out of 6 games. So they have something really special going on with that team. I think they had like 8 of the top 30 MLB pipeline prospects on their roster. So it was an impressive group, um, but yeah, again, just thankful that we have the teams that we have around here, even though, some of them are struggling, such as the Boston Red Sox, and, the Patriots aren't exactly what we're been accustomed to. There's still plenty to talk about, and there's a lot of passion that's there, and it'll allow us to, make some really good stuff. So.
Absolutely, for sure. And, obviously you just mentioned the Woo Sox and that Cleveland team and just, the prospects that they have, which should it be exciting to Guardians fans, some of the players that they have coming up. So that's good, promising for them. But what exactly do you do for the Woo Sox and how did you get involved with that?
Yeah, so last year I had a game pass just to kind of experience what it's like to cover a team. Very overwhelming. No idea where to go, how to get to like the clubhouse. When I did get to go into the clubhouse, that was overwhelming. Um, so I kind of tried to take as much of it in as I could, especially like, being in the, in the manager's office with the door closed. That was something else as well. I gotta fix my hat here. Um, but we actually got connected with them through just, I think it was the vice president of their player relations started following us. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, I figured like, why not, just see, what they look for when it comes to letting people go to the games to cover it. Reached out, got the 1 day pass, and then we reached out during the off season and just said, hey, how can we come back next year? And we got approved for a full season pass. It's myself and Andrew Parker. We go, and when we go there, we just, there's three things that I look at. One is representing ourselves individually, representing Beyond the Monster, and then we also have the Woo Sox logo that's on that pass as well. So even though we're not affiliated with them in any sort of capacity, they're allowing us to be there. So one is making sure we're representing all three and within a positive light. So we take it to be like very professional when we're there. But we drop our stuff in the clubhouse. We go down into the press box rather. We go into the clubhouse. It's getting easier to talk to players now. We're getting to the point where we'll go in there and they're saying hi first, or they're, throwing like a little fist bump as you're walking by. There's some guys that just kind of want to keep to themselves. We respect that. But having that access though, and being able to talk to guys like Bobby Dahlbeck, Jaron Duran, we've talked to Greg Allen. I talked to Jake Faria a ton before he got called up for that 1 game stint with the Sox. It's definitely, it's one I keep always saying it's really cool. Try not to come across as like that, like fanboy type of thing, but it is cool because these are guys that we see on TV.
Yeah.
And it's now nice to kind of have conversations with them and learn about them versus what we see on TV as well. And try to, so we're trying to figure out ways to try to make it a little more of the human side of these players so fans can get a little bit more connected versus going to Baseball Reference and seeing that, player X is hitting 150 and immediately think that they suck when there's really some other things that's there. So, but yeah, it's really just kind of like day to day. It's awesome getting to talk to Chad Tracy, the Woo Sox manager. It's a different experience. He's so welcoming in like the way his body language is when you're talking with him. It's just, I think it's a guy that if you could get a chance to talk baseball with, it just do it. You know what I mean? He's got a ton of knowledge. It's been really nice to be able to network too with other, Katie from Mass Live. I've met her name is Tiffany. She is oh my gosh, she's gonna kill me for not remembering the name of her. It's like something sports talk, but anyway. Um, but even though like the people through the Worcester Telegram Gazette and just through everybody through the Woo Sox as well, like the guys who call the game to Cooper Boardman to like guys like that. So yeah, so we really just kind of treat it as if we're covering a beat. And then we've put out a ton of content so far. We got some audio that'll be coming out this week from Taylor Broadway, James Paxton, and Brandon Walter. So I got to get myself caught up on those. But it's great, and hopefully we get an opportunity to do that with the Red Sox at someday. So
Yeah, that's super cool. And all those names you mentioned, just being able to build those connections and build your network, which is so important being in this type of industry. And that's definitely something that I've learned is those connections definitely can get you far. And if you're continuing to do it and you do a good job, then like you just said, maybe it will open the door to do similar things for Red Sox games going forward.
yeah, and the Red Sox, they're tough. So we inquired with them, I want to say right before the season started, and they were upfront and said, this is our criteria and what, how we go about doing it. I was kind of like, wow, that they said no. And I'm like, well, I'm going to be, we literally going to have your chief baseball officer on our podcast in like 3 days from now, but whatever. Um, but the way we kind of look at it is if we continue to go and really take a professional approach to it. And, it's hard to kind of sometimes get some balance because you want to make sure that you're speaking in a positive light with a lot of these players, but also on the flip side, I think they do understand that we do have a role too. We got to be critical, which, we are, but, it is to your point, you never know who you're going to meet. You never know who's going to read your stuff. the networking has been great. Even just random people they'll recognize you from Twitter. Like that's the most crazy piece to me, just to be, out there. We had an older lady that was like, "Oh, can we get a picture?" And I was like, "With who?" She's like, "Oh, with you. I recognize you from Twitter." Oh, okay. Like it's weird. You know what I mean? So getting
Yeah.
adjusted to that.
Yeah, it's super cool. That's definitely super cool because you know that people are really aware of your content and people are
Yeah.
seeing it. So you just want to keep doing what you're doing. And I kind of have that same mentality towards my work too, because I'm like, you never know who's going to come across it on any given day and what kinds of doors that can open.
Yeah, to have Hein Bloom go and say, "I know who you are," before you even introduced yourself to him when we talked to him down in Florida, just being out at the fields, that was just being like, okay, you know what I mean? I'm happy
Yeah.
that he knew who I was, because I mean it means he's paying attention to you know, the news that's going out there. But um, yeah, it's the last like 6 to 8 months has really been kind of a surreal, thing really for me, and even like some of the other guys too who've gotten, access. Like I said, Andrew, who was with me with the Woo Sox, Jamie, who's got his pass with the Tampa Bay Rays while he's down in Florida right now. I have a bunch of other guys who are live in different parts of the country that are branching out, getting access to some of the teams, and we're trying to put that content at least out there so they can build a little portfolio for themselves while kind of breaking it up a little bit. It is kind of weird for a Red Sox fan to open up our Substack and then get an email and it's about, the Seattle Mariners AA team that's out in Arkansas, but it's different. We try to give some different insights about, I think it's what makes us a little more unique than others. We try to do a lot of outside the box stuff while also giving you, the regular daily content that I think that fans, like to get.
Yeah, you wanna have your unique identity and something that you bring to the table that not just everybody else brings to the
Mhm.
table, and you wanna be able to have something that you do that people are like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to this person in particular for this content because I know that that's something that I can find from them that nobody else has." Because if you're just presenting the information that anybody else can give you, then why would they choose to get that from you as opposed to somebody else,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
and that's what makes it hard, because you have to, put out, for example, like Bobby Dolbeck, getting optioned down to AAA, or we might have, there was someone who commented on the one of the Beyond the Monster posts saying like, "Oh, you're the 23rd thing that I've seen today with the Red Sox lineup," and it's like, well, that's great, but we're still going to put that out there. So there's going to be similarities of stuff that you're going to see, but then it's the other stuff that we're trying to get out there that you may not be able to get. You know what I mean? So, and we're hoping with some of these stories, with the access to these players, it'll kind of help us, separate a little bit more kind of from, the pack. One of the things we've constantly talked about is we want to try to be, a destination website, which is really hard. You know what I mean? I think a lot of times people, they go and they write an article for whatever website that they're writing for and assume that 20,000 people are going to flood in there. And it's just not how it works. You
Yeah.
have to be able to go ahead and put the grind through of sharing it everywhere, and getting your product out in front of somebody. So, we would love to be at a point where, hey, you know what? I can go to website X and I can get this Red Sox content because it's really good and it's just on par with the Globe, the Herald, Mass Live. So that's kind of like what our expectations are. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like where I'm always thinking. The fact that I have those expectations for a website to be wanting to be on par with that. Sometimes the guys look at me being like, "Chris, you're a little crazy," but they also thought I was crazy saying we'd get Hein Bloom, and we got Hein Bloom. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's all about that hard work and continuing to just put your stuff out there. I mean, I know for me, I'm doing the same thing, constantly sharing my content, constantly promoting it all over social media because you have to, because you're not just going to wake up one day and automatically all these people are going to just flow towards what you're doing. You have to make the effort to get that out there for
mhm.
people, and then you start to notice the payoff over time.
Yeah, a podcast is the hardest thing, at least I've found, to try to
Yeah.
promote and grow and build, because there's
Yeah.
so many different ways to consume, people's podcasts. You know what I mean? Like, and for us, we don't like to do our podcast. We like to try to do and release a bunch of either like 30-minute shows to try to really, you know, hopefully catch someone's attention span, or if we get audio at these games, try to give that audio out to try to get the fan a little bit closer to the player. You know what I mean? It sucked because I only had like a minute worth of James Paxton audio last Tuesday, and I was like, I can't just release a minute worth of audio as a podcast. It's just weird. We were able to get more on Friday when he pitched, so I'm gonna hopefully have that out later today. So I just find that podcast is so hard. It's probably not our strongest suit right now. But it's certainly something that we're hoping to get stronger with. We've seen a massive growth in following thanks to the like I said, the High and Bloom show, and we're hoping to continue to build on that momentum. But I give everybody who works incredibly hard at promoting their shows and constantly finding ways to get people and that traffic to that just a ton of credit, because it is a lot of hard work to. I think I read something where if you can get past your first 5 episodes, you're kind of going to be, and you can continue to push, you're going to be in a good spot. Like the average new podcast lasts less than 5 episodes.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
For me,
Crazy.
I personally do believe that it's because you expect that, hey, like 1 million people are going to listen to your show, and it doesn't work that way. You
Yeah.
have to truly, truly promote and figure out ways and be unique and be different. You know what I mean? And that's why there's 100 million Red Sox podcasts right now, if you think about it.
So many.
So, what are you going to bring that's going to be different than, you get your top tier, you get Carabas, then, you have ITM, pods like that. It's that next level of podcasts. Like, how can you be different? And that's what's really, really hard. And so I think that's something that we need to be better with. But, with just like a show like yours too, like just being able to promote it and finding ways to bring that traffic in, getting the guests that you get, it's not easy. And I give people a ton of credit for putting the time and effort into trying to grow that. It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I definitely appreciate that. It's definitely a grind. I mean, I'm constantly, promoting, constantly getting different types of guests too, that do different things, that can bring different perspectives on different things, because I think that that's so important too, to
Mm-hmm.
be able to hear different perspectives from people. So I'm constantly looking for different people to come on that can offer those different types of perspectives too. And I think that's definitely been super helpful, but it is hard. It's definitely a lot of work, and you need to be willing to commit.
100%.
But yeah, I know. Yeah. So obviously, you do a lot of baseball coverage. You're constantly around it on a day-to-day basis. I did want to, get your perspective
Sure.
on the Red Sox so far this season. I know, like you mentioned, they're they're struggling a little bit. I mean, they've had some bad losses. I mean, obviously getting swept by the Pirates is not ideal. And then, they went and took 3 of 4 from the Angels. They got swept by the Rays. It's been kind of so far just a little bit of an up and down. Um, and, I think going into the season, I think there's been a mix of standards that were set for this team in terms of what people were expecting going into the season, because I saw it on Twitter. There are some people who were like, this team is probably not going to win more than 75 games. Then there were other people who were like, if fully healthy, I think this team can be a playoff contending team, as long as they are healthy. So, based on what you've seen so far, is where they're at right now, is that about where you expected them to be at this point, or is it better or worse than you expected it to be?
Well, so going into the season, I've always really felt, and I've said it a bunch, that I felt that their ceiling was probably 85 wins, and that would mean like a lot of things went right for them. Unfortunately, a lot of things haven't gone right to start the year. Losing Duvall, breaking his wrist, Zach Kelly, just a handful of transactions they've had to make to go ahead and supplement the major league roster. So I thought that 85 was probably going to be the ceiling. I felt that maybe they would be a little Jekyll and Hyde at first, and they have been. It's not a recipe for sustainability, and it's a word that Bloom uses a lot. So hopefully, over the next 2 weeks or so, they can try to build a little bit of a buffer with some of these series that are coming up, because when they get into the month of May, they're going to get into this. It's like a gauntlet of a schedule between the Yankees, and they get the Blue Jays, the Padres, just to name a few. So, but yeah, to your question though, this is kind of where I thought they would be. You just really need a lot to go your way in order for this team to, I think, to achieve what our fans want them to achieve. Personally, I just want them to win over 70.5 games because I would hit my over on the bet that I played with some friends. So I really want that. But beyond that, though, would it surprise me if they finish 500? No. Would it surprise me if they fell under 500? Yes, a little bit, because I do think they got some talent to try to be competitive. They just need to get through, and they need some guys to produce too. Arroyo needs to start to hit. Kike's got to get it together. Um, Justin Turner's finally starting to come around. The starting rotation needs to start to give them a little bit more length as well. I think if we start to see that, I think we're going to start to see it level out a little bit. But if they continue to go with that pendulum of what they're currently doing, where it's just that up and down, like you said, I just, it's not going to make for, I think, a season that fans are going to want to get behind, and that constant complaining that we see on social media, I think, is only going to increase.
Yeah, I mean it's Red Sox fans, there's no way to truly make everybody happy. But like you said, I don't think that complaining is going to stop because they haven't really shown or given us a reason to feel like it should stop. One of the things I will say is I was concerned about the starting rotation going into the season. I just felt like there were too many question marks in terms of injuries and just people who not necessarily quite proven enough yet to be in the starting rotation. So in terms of just what they're trying to work with now in that rotation, I mean, obviously you can speak more on James Paxton's progress because you've actually seen him pitch in person in rehab starts. So I am curious about that and kind of, more of his progress and where he's at. But just in general, I mean, obviously Chris Sale's recent history with the injuries has not been great. And, the Chris Sale that helped us win a World Series was awesome. That's what they thought that they were getting when they signed that extension was, that Chris Sale. And then obviously the injuries, which you can't prevent. But then he comes back and, I didn't have high expectations for him going into this season because he hadn't pitched really in a while. And it's hard to expect somebody to, pitch really well off the bat when last season he really didn't pitch much at all. So it's tough to expect a lot from him. And then, Whitlock, who has had a lot more bullpen time here than he has as a starter so far. And obviously he was fantastic the other day against the Angels. I was actually there on Sunday in what was a record, like really quick baseball game. And it's kind of weird too. I was like, I've never sat a baseball game for less than 2 hours before. So this is really, really strange. But he looked really good. One of the things that I was wondering about him was longevity, whether he would be able to be somebody you can rely on to see another lineup for more than 2 times through because he was used to being in the bullpen. So that was a question that I had with him. And obviously, Bayo, it was unfortunate that he was injured to start the season. I really liked what I saw from him last year, though. I think there's a lot of upside and a lot of potential with him. I think he kind of just needs to start to figure things out again and get back into it. I'm not really moved by his start yesterday. I don't think that's really an indication of how it's actually going to really be for him. I think he just, it was his first start back after he was injured. So I'm willing to give him some leeway. So I think that they can make something really special out of him, which is good. And Houck, I like overall as a pitcher. I think he has really good stuff. But again, he's always had a longevity problem with staying in games. And, by the time he hits the third time through the order, they usually have him figured out. So like you touched on, longevity of starting pitching has been an issue because the bullpen really, for the most part, has been able to get their job done. And they're not giving up really a whole lot of runs, which I'm super impressed by. And I do think that's something that Bloom did a good job of in the offseason was addressing the bullpen and making some adjustments to improve the pen. Because I think that was something that was obviously a necessity because the bullpen was not good last year. And obviously that was one of the weakest aspects of the team. So I do think the bullpen has been relatively solid, but it's just tough because the starters aren't going that deep. So I'm worried that it's going to wear out the bullpen because they've been forced to come into games earlier.
Yeah, so I thought the bullpen was one of their strengths, at least on paper anyway, coming into the season, because you finally had a closer for the first time in a handful of years.
Who's been awesome so far.
She's been really good. I thought Chris Martin coming here, unfortunately, is on the 15-day IL, but it doesn't really appear that it's going to be too serious with him. So I thought that the bullpen, again, on paper, was going to be a strength for them, and so far it has been. I think once they figure out, this rotation piece, putting a guy like Tanner Houck into the bullpen, even though I've liked him so far out of the rotation, and I've been a Houck supporter over the off season of one, not trading him and seeing what we can get out of him. I think though he'll be able to give the Red Sox, an additional kind of like a 1-2 punch with Winkowski, and even somewhat similar to what Cutter Crawford, what he did yesterday. I think there's something to be said to be able to have guys that can do that, to have those swing men who can come in and be legitimate pieces. So I think the bullpen is going to continue to be the strength unless, more guys go down. And then my only concern with the Red Sox from that standpoint is if you look at some of the way the roster is built, they really don't have a lot of traditional relievers in their system. It's mainly a lot of starting pitching. I think Chaim Bloom realized that last year he didn't have enough arms from a starting pitching perspective. So he went and and I say it all the time, and people give me a hard time when I say this, there is a lot of pitching depth within the Red Sox in their system. Whether you like the players or not, that's a different conversation. So it's really going to be a matter of, if someone goes down, could a guy like Brian Mata come up and be a reliever when they really want him to be a starter? Things along those lines. So I do like the pen. The starting rotation is only going to, like I said, take this team as far as they're looking to go. Hopefully Sale can start to figure it out. The results to begin the season aren't exactly what I know, that the expectations were probably not as high on him, but the expectations are still there. And, an 11+ ERA is not Chris Sale. And hopefully it's just really the first couple of starts, kind of get that out of the way, comes back, and we start to get, a semblance of what he's going to be. Really, really like what I've seen out of Garrett Whitlock so far. I was happy to see him go, as far as he did in his last start. And I think that he's kind of showing as to why the Red Sox want him to be a starter. He was a starter within the minors with the Yankees. So I think it's one of those where we're just going to need to see probably a really, a full season before we can really say, hey, this is going to work or not. As for a guy like Bayo, a little disappointed with yesterday's start. He was healthy coming into it. He looked really good with Worcester the other day. He was consistently hitting 97 with the sinker. He was able to get it, get the fastball going around like 95, 96. He was working on throwing a curveball really for the first time. I know he threw some curveballs in the past, but he was really trying to feature that as part of his arsenal. Got that strikeout to begin the game, and it just immediately seemed like the wheels came off. It was, it just wasn't what I was expecting. And I know a lot of people were saying, well, the weather wasn't the same too for Ohtani. I know they're two different pitchers as well. You know what I mean? So,
yeah,
but Ohtani
is just on his own level, really.
Yeah. So the conditions were the same for both pitchers. It just, Bayo he didn't have it. The command, the stuff wasn't there on Monday. So we'll see how the next couple of starts go, but I don't think yesterday was a byproduct of him still being hurt. I think it's just a byproduct of he didn't have it, and it sucks he didn't have it in his first game. So, yes, about Paxton. He only went like 3 and like 2/3 innings, but being able to see him kind of bring the fastball when he wanted to bring it to 96, that was impressive. He was able to rear back and just kind of throw that when he wanted to. He was working on just executing his pitches. We asked Chad Tracy after the game really what he thought, especially with coming with the hamstring and it's that plant foot. He thought that, it looked really good. At times he seems a little timid, kind of planting down. Just I think maybe it's in the back of his head, like, hey, this is, was a thing. Paxton still thinks that he needs 1 or 2 starts. The Red Sox, I think, said they think he needs 1. I'm sure they'll probably end up getting the 2 versus, rushing him. But I think Paxton could be a really, big lift to the team when he gets up there. He he's throwing the ball well. He's had the command. Um, Definitely want to see another start of him going 75 pitches, maybe even 80 this time. Um, so the command's not the issue, the arm's not the issue. I think really right now it might be just more the mental side of it, knowing like, hey, I've dealt with so many injuries over the last handful of seasons, especially like little ticky tack ones after the Tommy John, that I think he just needs to gain his confidence that he can go out there, pitch 5 strong innings, build from there at the big league level. But we're probably, unless something happens, maybe I would say at least 2 weeks away before he's back. 3 on the long end.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty soon. And I think that might actually be quicker than what some people were expecting for his return. And the thing with Paxton is, we've seen him be really solid. We've seen him be lights out when he was with other teams, so we know what he can bring. And if he is healthy, I do believe he's somebody who can be super valuable in this rotation. And I think this rotation needs somebody like him. But again, the health has been a concern. And I'm also a little bit concerned at, the fact that he hasn't thrown a baseball at the major league level in a while. So that's definitely going to be something I think at first that might be prevalent when he comes up. And we might be able to tell that he has been removed from that for a little bit, but he's been around for so long too that I don't think it'd be the type of thing that would take too long for him to adjust back to when he does get that time and when he returns and is fully back in the rotation.
Yeah, I know. I think give him a couple of starts once he's back up there, and he should be able to kind of slot right in. I mean, what's good about him coming back is it is a big league arm. He's pitched, you know, meaningful games in the past. I think everybody's just down on him because of the fact that there's been injuries and he didn't pitch at all last year, and I think they equate, a figure that he makes per year with not seeing him on the mound, and just the MO of just kind of how the Red Sox have been built the last couple of years. I think it'd be disingenuous on Red Sox fans' parts if we just don't at least give this guy an opportunity to show what he can do once he's there, and he's getting close. He definitely put in the work. He pitched his, 3 2/3. He finished up with that. Typically, we get the opportunity like right after that to go down to the clubhouse and then talk to the rehab pitcher. He went right into the right into the to the gym right next to the in the ballpark, and he started working out. And then he ate. We talked to him after the game. So not only did he pitch, he put in his work. He stayed there. He's been around the Red Sox for the last week and change. So it's definitely a guy that wants to get back. He's working to get back, and he should be back hopefully very soon. There's nothing that's indicating that there's anything that's going to stop him at this time. So there's some excitement around with him, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see him because obviously, Red Sox fans have been anticipating him being here. And when they signed him, just looking at the terms of that contract, it was very low risk, high reward, in my opinion, that it was really, if they sign him and they get the productivity from him, then that's fantastic. But if, it ends up not really panning out, it's not like they, overspent to get him. And it's not like they committed for a long amount of time to him either. So I just really felt like it was one of those low risk, high reward type of situations where if he can come and be super productive in the rotation, I think that can change a lot of things in terms of where the rotation is at right now, because he is somebody who we know has the capability to go deep into games when healthy. And I think, like you said, he'll have to work up to that. Probably he won't be able to do it likely in his first couple starts, probably. But I think once he's back acclimated, hopefully he can provide, that longevity that we haven't been able to see from a lot of the starters so far.
Yeah, and I think when he pitches again next this week, as of right now, he's not penciled in to go with the Woo Sox, so I don't know if he's going to go and pitch with Portland.
Okay.
Trying to see. Yeah, no, they didn't send out any updated notes yet. But I mean, that could change. The Sox could end up having him go out on the road and pitch, but if it ends up being up here in Portland or even just another rehab down in Fort Myers with the minor leaguers, his secondary pitches have been good. There's no issues. It's there. Um, so he's like I said, it's close. So and being able to provide a little bit more depth to that Red Sox rotation that's going to need it. You're going to need more than 8 starters, 9 starters anyway to get through a full 162. Um, so I get why Red Sox fans are going to be a little guarded
Yep.
when it comes to him. I you know what I mean, but it's another piece, and who knows, he could get hot for 5 or 6 starts, and that's a difference of a handful of wins, and who knows what can happen from there. So I agree with what you said, though. Definitely low risk, high reward, and who knows, he has a good year this year, maybe he comes back. If not, you tried, and you move on to the next project.
Yeah, exactly. To me is also very similar to the Corey Kluber thing, because with him, obviously, he's somebody who he's been around for a long time, and he's just super experienced, but he is kind of, you know, heading towards the back end of his career, really. And when he came here, I was like, how much does he really have in the tank? What is he going to bring to this Red Sox rotation right now? What we've seen from him so far is about kind of what I thought. I didn't really expect him to be somebody who was going to be lights out. I do think, a little bit more from him would be great. But he's not somebody who I'm expecting to really be, a front end starter. As as people are starting to come back and the rotation starting to be more established. And I think by signing him, their intention was when they are healthy and other people are able to come back, he's just kind of somebody who is an arm that they can use in the rotation, but is not somebody who is expected to be, an ace or anything like that.
Definitely a more of a backer rotation, type of arm to where he's at right now. I would really like him to not throw the 88-mile-an-hour changeup down the middle. The Tampa Bay Rays made him pay for that in his last start. So if we can avoid that, that'd be great. But no, I would say he's definitely someone that is probably more so that maybe 4, even 5 starter on a really good team. It's probably where he should be at. I don't really look at what he's going to do from a wins and losses standpoint. It's about how many starts is he going to make. Made 31, I think it was last year. So if he can come in here and do something similar, 30, 31 starts, and then from there, look at some of the other numbers that kind of, yielded the result as to why his win-loss record was, ends up being the way that it is. ERA is going to come down. He's got to bring that down. But again, a lot of that is he hasn't pitched, deep into games, and he's walking guys. And that's also, when you put players on with the free pass, it always comes back to bite you. So if you
Yep.
can start limiting those walks down over the next couple of weeks, he pitched in two games back home where it was kind of cold. Weather wasn't favorable, especially the home opener. I was there. I was freezing.
Definitely not ideal weather for
No,
opening day.
not at all. And then on top of it, pitching down against the hottest team in baseball, against Tampa, um, I think the Rays really kind of humbled the Red Sox a little bit.
Yeah.
Kind of happy that they're done with the Rays piece, but for now. But yeah, I think that's once they start to reshuffle this rotation, as guys start to come back and they're healthier, Kluber not having to feel as if he's an ace, which I don't never really looked at him as that. Him starting the first game of the season never swayed how I looked at him. I know it did for a lot of people, but he didn't for me.
Yeah, I know
And
some people were like, do they really see Kluber as their number one starter? But I didn't. I was like, I don't think they ever really
yeah,
expected him to be when they brought him here.
I think the thought, I mean, baseball's changing. So just because certain players start on opening day doesn't necessarily always equate to them being the ace. Yeah, the Yankees said, we'll have Garrett Cole. That's an ace. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But the thing too is the Red Sox don't have an ace right now. And
yeah,
that's something that they're going to need to fix over the next, I would say, no more than 2 seasons. There's a free agency, with free agency coming up this year. There's a lot of really good arms. It's a matter of whether you want to pay for those arms and assume the risk that comes with that. Um, is Bayo going to be that guy? Who knows? Not based off what we saw yesterday, but he does have some upside. Beyond that, I don't really think that they have anybody who is an ace type in the upper levels of the system. A lot of their really good young starting pitching outside of Mata Murphy and Brandon Walter is really down in single A between Salem, Greenville. There's a wave of really good young talented pitchers that are going to make their way up here, but we're probably like 2 or 3 years away from them really even being in the conversation of guys that can impact the Boston Red Sox unless someone comes out of completely out of nowhere. But right now, I don't really see that.
Yeah, that is a major issue because good teams and successful teams do have an ace that can be the top of their rotation that is your guy that generally is going to produce, and that you can rely on day to day to get the job done. And the Red Sox just don't have, they have a good amount of pitchers who are mid to lower end rotation type of guys on the team. That could be, somewhere between like a 3, 4, a lot of the pitchers that they have now. I think I don't know. Maybe they are hoping that Whitlock could eventually become somebody like that. And I feel like the potential's there, but it's way too soon to say that he's somebody who can really be considered a true ace down the road.
Yeah, I would say with a lot of the guys right now, the Bayos of the world, Whitlock, um, whoever, right? I would say let's just focus on seeing what type of results they can give you over a course of a full season before trying to figure out if they're going to be, the 1 or the 2 or the 3. We haven't got to see what Whitlock is like over a course of a full season as a starter. We got to see what he's like as a reliever. He was dominant. So now let's see what he brings to the table. Same thing with Bayo. Um, and then who knows for when we go into next season, then you can say, okay, Garrett Whitlock is our number 2, or Brian Bayo is our 2 or 3, or whatever it might be. But a lot of these guys have to pitch. They have to go out and show that they can do this on a consistent basis and pick up the ball every fifth day. Versus having to hope and rely that Nick Pivetta can give you 170 innings, which I'm not high on Nick Pivetta, and I haven't really been high on him all year. He's pitched well, but he can pick up the ball for 170 innings over the course of the season. But as I've been mentioning, when the Globe released the article that had Alex Cora talking about how he didn't really prepare very well, what good are those innings if he doesn't prepare for them? So, I think there's a lot of question marks around the rotation, and fans should be skeptical and should have, their guard up. But I also think that it's okay to lower it a little bit because these guys, once they start to get into a rhythm and into a groove, we might truly get to see exactly what they are. And if they suck, then they suck. You know what I mean? But you won't know. We're not going to know until they go out there and they do it. And just it's okay not to live and breathe on every single pitch. Let these guys go out there, let them do it, and then critique it afterwards. Then have the conversation. Not
Yeah,
2 innings into a game and say Bayo needs to go back down to AAA. Well, no, you need to see a sample size of more than just 2 innings and 45 pitches.
people can be very, very reactionary. I've learned just from, the Twitter universe. People can be just very, very reactionary if something happens. And it's like, a pitcher will give up a few runs in the first inning and everybody's like, oh my God, he sucks. Like he needs to
Yeah,
go down to AAA. And I'm like, the guy's pitched 1 inning. Like, can we relax here for a
yeah.
little bit, please?
Every
But
once in a while, we'll go out of the press box. We'll go down and we'll sit in the seats because you can pretty much sit wherever you want if it's not a full house there, and you'll even hear it too with some of the fans that's in the crowd. Like just it's just so like it's been like I think it was who started Sunday, might have been Guadino, and then they went to Taylor Broadway. Um, it was modest start. Sorry, I was thinking about. And he had a really bad inning. I think he hit it was 4 to 5 batters that he hit in just 1 inning on top of walking 3. You know what I
oh
mean?
geez,
So
yeah, that's
man
bad.
wasn't there, but as we're sitting kind of down low, you can hear the fans kind of behind you as the groans of every pitch and just the little peanut gallery from there. So that's what makes baseball fun, especially in these parts here. But um we just gotta let these guys kind of do it and kind of see what happens after a couple of starts, and that turns into a couple of weeks, and then we can figure out what we actually have with these players.
Yeah, exactly. And that same idea, because there's somebody else too who might kind of fall into that category, which is Yoshida, somebody who obviously they signed in the off season. I was actually very excited about it just based on what I had read about, some of his stats from Japan and watching some videos of, him crushing baseballs in Japan. And obviously he had a fantastic World Baseball Classic too. So I was like, I
Mhm.
can't believe like this guy is ours. I'm so excited to have him here. I hope he, is able to produce. Obviously, he has not really been producing yet so far. I did mention on Twitter, it was during the Rays series, and I said, he's somebody who I feel like we still need to give some time to be able to adapt, because obviously the game might be a little bit different here than what he's used to, and there might be certain mechanics that he has to adjust. So I said, I still feel like he's somebody who can really be an offensive threat here. He just needs the time to kind of get acclimated to playing in Boston and everything, because that does take time for some people. How do you feel about him? Are you concerned about what you've seen from him and being able to start to turn that around? Because I do believe, obviously, the offense has been finding a way to get the job done a lot, and a lot of that in part was due to Adam Duvall. And he was just on fire when he started here,
Mhm.
which I don't think anybody expected him to really be doing what he was doing. I know I personally didn't. But he was driving a lot of the offense, and then obviously he got injured, and now it's, you have players who are finding a way to help get the job done. You already mentioned players like Kike and Arroyo who are just really not hitting at all. Obviously Devers is going to hit. Turner, like you said, seems to be starting to find his bat, and then Verdugo, I still think we need to see more from him too. But Yoshida is somebody who I'm looking at that I feel like has the potential to be able to really produce in the lineup. And I believe if we want to be able to sustain the offensive success for this team, he's going to have to be a big part of that.
Yeah, so I mean, I just pulled his stats up. So it's only been 12 games that
Yeah.
he's played in. He is being, is hampered a little bit with that hamstring right now. Um, I thought for a minute he was going to go on the IL, to be honest with you, just with the amount of games that he was missing. But if you look at a lot of his, I forgot who posted this on Twitter, and then I went back and I started to look. His baseball savant, they're pitching him away, and yet he's still chopping them to second. So I think if he can start to push the ball and go with it and go to left field and use the monster and left field to his advantage, I think he'll start to break out of this mini slump. He's a good hitter. It's just, again, what stinks is when you slump at the beginning of the season, it's magnified so much more,
Yep.
because when you go to look at the stats, you can maybe hide, going 8 for 42 in the middle of, June, and you were hitting 270. Now you're down at 230. You can kind of, that's easier to kind of hide than you can at the beginning of the season, where right now I think it says he's hitting a buck 86. I think that's what it
Yeah.
says.
Yeah.
So,
And especially for somebody like him who hasn't, been on the team before. If it was somebody who was having this kind of slump at the beginning, I mean, I'll just use Devers as an example. If
mhm.
he was slumping right now at this time, I don't think people would be really concerned about it because he's Devers, and we know, obviously that he's one of the best hitters in baseball. So it's there's not really as much to be concerned about. But with somebody like him who already has to prove himself here and he's slumping at the beginning of the season, that's just tough for him.
Yeah, I like the other day he was hitting sixth. I think, try to keep him a little more in that mid to lower part of the lineup and let him start to begin to work his way through. Maybe the hamstring is on his brain, and you know, that's a massive part as to why he's, not performing. But he is going to need to start utilizing all parts of the field, because if he's going to keep trying just to pull, we're just seeing those little bleeders to second, and even some of the stuff that he's gone on base with. The opposition has allowed him to get there, whether it was an error or what have you. So, um,
Mhm.
I think it's obviously way too early to go ahead and start to think about whether he's a bust or anything like that. He hasn't performed to the expectations I think that a lot of people have had for him, which sure, I mean the numbers don't lie. Um, but again, let's see where he's at in June. You know what I mean? Let's see where we're at in June with him, and if it's still the same, he's hitting in the low 200s and the offense isn't there. Red Sox are gonna have to explain that, and they're gonna wear that, and rightfully so. But I have a hard time believing that they're gonna pay $95 million to a guy from Japan without knowing and believing that he's going to give you similar, to what he did out there and what we got to see in the WBC. So I think time will tell, but I also don't think a lot of Red Sox fans are too amped up and worried about that right now. I think that'll start to change in the next couple of weeks if we don't see a change with him offensively.
Yeah, I think people are, I mean, I know for myself, obviously, I had said I want to be patient with him because I think he needs time to adapt and kind of
Mm-hmm.
figure out how he needs to approach things at the plate. And, the more he hits at Fenway, I think the more that will come in terms of figuring out
Mm-hmm.
where he should be trying to place the ball. And I think that's something that is just going to take time. And like you said, I mean, it's so early on in the season that for somebody like him, I didn't think that he was just going to come in here and just be, hitting 300 right off the bat because he is somebody who, has a lot of power and I think has the capability to crush some baseballs out of Fenway once he really gets to feel comfortable. But I'm not going to sit here and say I don't believe in this guy, but if come June or July, if he's still hitting like this, then that's going to start to be a tough look on the Red Sox because it's going to be like, well, how do you explain and justify, feeling that confident in somebody to give him the contract that you did, and this is what he's doing.
Especially
So
as
it's
quickly as they did too. I mean, the second
yeah,
he was posted, he signed, which
yep,
was very un-Bloom like because Bloom kind
yep.
of goes at the beat of his own drum, and they were really really quick to pull the trigger and make that happen with Yoshida. So um,
Obviously, they saw something in him that made them really, really want him because I was surprised too at how quickly that news broke. Because, like you said, Heim seems to be more of a patient guy in terms of waiting for moves that he feels like are appropriate as opposed to pulling the trigger on somebody really quickly. And that's kind of always how he's operated. And we've seen it so much. We've seen it in the offseason and we've seen it at the trade deadline in the time that he's been here too. And kind of just working quietly behind the scenes and then not really making a splash until he feels like it's the right situation. But there was obviously, it seemed like they obviously had their eye on him for a while, and there was just something about him that they saw that we just haven't seen yet.
yeah, and I think we're going to see it soon. Soon
Yeah.
as in tomorrow, probably not.
Yeah.
But I think eventually it's going to start to come around, and I think the key right now is to make sure he gets healthy. Let's get him back being 100% healthy, and then hopefully he starts to turn it loose, starts going to left field. I mean, the Red Sox have all the data in the world and then some. I'm sure they've had those conversations, with him about doing that. So I have confidence when it comes to the Yoshida piece. And then again, if we get into June and if we're still seeing the sample size, then yeah, I think the tune needs to change a little bit, kind of turn up the fire a little bit and find out, okay, what are we missing here, when it comes to this player, because this is not, this is not what you sold us when you signed him. So, I have him on one of my fantasy teams. So I'm hoping he can turn around. I signed him for one of my keeper leagues. So
Yeah. So for the sake of your fantasy team, he
yeah,
needs to start to step
got
things up a little bit.
3 years with him. So let's go.
Yeah. No, it is true. It's still so early to be making those justifications, but I do think if he can start to be productive, that'll just boost the offense and even more because there is a lot of talent in the offense. I mean, obviously, losing JD and losing Bogarts, like those were pretty big pieces in the offense, Xander especially. But obviously the Trevor Story injury wasn't ideal either because he's somebody who can provide a lot of offensive productivity if he's healthy. So he's another person who, when he's healthy, and who knows when that's going to be, when he's even going to be able to come back. But that's a really important piece of the offense that I feel like when people look at the Red Sox offense right now, they kind of forget to incorporate that factor that the Red Sox weren't, expecting that to happen. And then they had to kind of work around it, signing Duvall and moving Kike to the infield. That's a huge part of the offense that they're missing. And I'm looking at the Red Sox offense. If they have a healthy Trevor Story, there's some talent in that lineup. And I think the offense has the capability, as they've already shown plenty of times, to really, really produce and put up a lot of runs.
Yeah, I think I read either yesterday or the day before that Story is going to start to swing a bat in 2 weeks.
Oh, good.
So that's encouraging to hear. He's starting to throw. That's encouraging to hear. So maybe we're going to see him back in July, and getting him and Duvall back around that end of June, early July, or whatever it might be, is going to be a huge boost. I really hope that the Red Sox don't use those two as coming back as reasons to not make additional acquisitions if they're still in it.
I agree.
Hopefully they can go ahead and add another. I think they're going to have to look at something. They still, in my opinion, they just lack right-handed, depth from a hitting perspective and from power. If you look at the Woo Sox roster, they're loaded with lefties, but they also need they need some right-handed hitters down there. I mean, they got Nico Goodrum who they can bring up, but he's taken a lot of professional style at bats. That was a big thing that it's been kind of sit over the last, I want to say, I don't know, week or so down with Worcester, but they don't have a lot of right-handed pop, outside of Bobby Dahlbeck. So they're gonna have to figure out something from that standpoint. And then you got to look at, when is Mondesi back? Royo struggling. Do we need to make another move there at some point? So there's still some question marks with the team, and I'm confident that Bloom in company is looking at all that. It's really just a matter of when something can finally happen. Because we're 3 weeks into a season. Not many teams are motivated to make these trades. So if you're going to get anybody, it's going to be someone being DFA'd, and hopefully you can catch lightning in a bottle for a short period of time before your next move. So there's still some work that needs to be done there.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And especially if they want to compete. They're in a really good division now too. All the other teams in the division are competitive. So it's, they're going to have to be aggressive and make some moves if they really feel like they have the capability to compete, and if they're winning games and they're showing that they have the potential to be a postseason team this year, they do definitely have to make some more moves. But it has been interesting seeing what the Rays are doing. Whether they're for real, obviously it's still way too early to draw specific conclusions on the Rays. I do think they are a good team. However, obviously nobody expected them to have the start that they've been having. I do think that just even from watching that Red Sox Rays series, I do think they are a very, very good baseball team, and there's a lot of talent over there. And they definitely have the capability to win the division this year.
Yeah, the roster is deeper. I think what that 4-game spread that we got to see is really what the Red Sox want to become. Having the depth and just what that offense has. I think there's a case to be made that a lot of those guys could be starters for a lot of teams in baseball. And then it just seems like whoever puts on a Rays jersey has been pitching really well.
Yeah, it's so weird how that works.
So
they just become good all of a sudden when they pitch for the Rays.
So hopefully, the Rays come down to earth. I think they're now 14-3.
Yeah,
to begin
which
the
is
year.
Still very good, but it's crazy.
So I think that's a team though, the same thing. How far is that offense going to take them, and what's the health of all that pitching going to look like over the course of a full season? It seems like though when guys go down, it's immediately next man up, and they don't seem to miss a beat. But that lineup right now is just a bunch of just guys that you may not know their name specifically, but they're putting the ball out of the park. Arozarena has been hitting. Yandy Diaz, I mean, you name it, Wander Franco. Um, Again, you name it, they're hitting, and it's a testament to what they're doing. Hopefully, the Red Sox can start to duplicate that a little bit more at a faster clip, because what they're doing, it's impressive, but also hasn't yielded them a championship yet.
Yeah, the running joke is always how many players on the Rays roster can you actually name? But they're producing, and it shows that what their system is working in terms of the way that they're finding talent and developing talent within their organization. And it's definitely something, it's admirable for sure. But like you said, it hasn't won them a World Series. So in a way, you want to be doing what the Rays are doing, but you also want to kind of do more than what they're doing and be willing to, bring in top level talent to your team too if you want to expedite that process of winning a championship too. So you kind of have to find that balance between what the Rays are doing and, going above that without having to give up a lot of your young talent that you have in your system. So it's
Yeah,
definitely a balance
it's
you have to
yeah,
find.
it's like you said, it's the balance, and I think it's starting to come around a little bit, in my opinion. I think with the Red Sox,
Yeah.
um, I think it'd be a lot easier to accept if this wasn't such a hyper focused market and a top market in baseball. But
Yes.
I think it's starting to slowly come around a little bit. It's just we need to develop the pitching like they have. Honestly, if the Red Sox can duplicate any team's performance and how to produce pitching, it'd be the Cleveland Guardians, because that team is constantly producing arms, whether it's for their bullpen or even for the rotation. They seem to find and have this formula. If it's almost as if the Red Sox can kind of steal some of that magic and thunder from them and bring that over here too as they continue to develop. But um, a lot, like I said, a lot of those guys I think right now are in that lower portion of the Red Sox system. We just got to see it. Um,
Yep.
but I mean, congrats to the Rays. I didn't expect this start to them for them, and it's and when you can, get off to a hot start like that, you can have these little bit of these hiccups, but they look like a team that to me that's fully going to compete this year.
Oh,
It's really
100%.
just a matter of what that's going to look like once it comes time when we really start talking about the playoffs. But they're the cream of the crop in the American League. Um, I still think the Blue Jays could surpass them. I am not high on New York strictly because of their pitching. I just don't think they got the pitching depth. I think they've been snake bitten with some injuries. Um, it's not I'm a Yankees fan type of thing. So, but I just look at the pitching and now they lost Stanton for what seems to be a month and a little bit more. Um, Curious as to what that depth looks like with New York and how that's going to look like for them in the coming weeks. But Tampa looks good.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're definitely a good team and they definitely have the pieces to be able to contend this year for sure. But I really do appreciate you joining me. This was awesome. I always enjoy talking Red Sox and I could talk about it all day. So I definitely appreciate, having you come on and sharing your thoughts.
No, definitely. It's been fun. You know what I mean? And just, you know, um, to like I said at the beginning, to say like 4 years ago that when I just started, my very first blog I ever wrote was on Ryan Brazier, which I can't
Oh
believe
wow.
thinking about it. I have that blog too. I'm gonna re-release it. I think once I have the website ready to go. I just don't want to send an email out talking about Ryan Brazier pitching 4 years ago and confuse people. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I think once the website is fully functional, and I'm hoping before May 1st, knocking on wood on that. Um, so, um, but again, just to be able to kind of have these opportunities and talk, baseball and it's a lot of fun and really looking forward to see what the Red Sox can do this year. I'm optimistic only because if I'm not optimistic, I will have to relive what we had to deal with last year. And I
Yeah.
don't want to
Last
have
year was
those
brutal.
feelings on a regular basis because it was so difficult, not only just as a Red Sox fan, but someone who creates content around that team to
Yeah.
find ways to want to get people to click and or listen to
Yeah.
what you're saying, writing, whatever it might be. So I'm a little more optimistic than probably my friends want me to be when we hang out. I always get a ton of crap about it. And I just like, look, I mean, one, I don't make the decisions on the players who signed or traded. I just have to find ways to figure out a story about that and make it entertaining or interesting. So, and that's what I've been trying to do. So hopefully we have an interesting season, and you know, it maybe leads to a playoff berth, but who knows?
Yeah, definitely a lot of questions still to be answered in terms of, where is this team really going to go? But fingers crossed for a fun rest of the season. And yeah, before we go, just let everybody know where they can find you on social media and find your content.
Yeah, so head over to it's Beyond the Monster, but it's MNSTR. Twitter only lets you use 15 letters when you want to put your name there for the handle. So it's at Beyond the Monster. You can follow me personally. It's at Chris Henrique. Very simple. Every single one of our handles has a link tree. If you click on the link tree, there's a directory to every single thing we do. The podcast, Obstructive View Red Sox podcast. The new guys, the Pesky Report, they're established and, part of, the network. We're and always looking to expand and grow that piece. But to the hockey show, Shorthanded Takes, I mean, everything is under that link tree. So if you click on that, there's, again, I think there's like 19 or 20 different ways that you can consume what we produce. So it's all available right then and there. But also, I say this in all the shows that have been going on, especially as of late. It's not just me. There's by Andrew Parker, he's one of our writers. Follow Jamie Gatlin, Stephen Brown, Miguel, Jake, Ed Hand. I mean, you go down the list of all these people. Everybody who has kind of stirred the pot a little bit of what we do is made what we do kind of special. So we're not here without any of those guys as well. So I like to make sure that we always throw out their names. Jake Iggy, I mean, you name it. Again, you name it. Those guys have all helped contribute in some capacity. So
That's awesome. Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of talent that you have over there. So I'm glad that it's working out well and it's been successful for you. But I'm sure
appreciate it.
we'll be in touch as the season progresses, and whether it's letting out frustrations or being excited about something, because all of those emotions can come full circle in a season. But thank you so much again for joining me. Thanks as always, everybody, for tuning into the show. Really appreciate it every week. I know I say that, but it really is, the show really wouldn't be where it is without everyone's support and constantly following and sharing. So thank you so much again. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of the week. Go Red Sox, go Bruins, go Celtics, and have a great rest of the week, everyone. I'll catch you all next time.